Let's get started. How's everyone doing today? Jazz fingers. I don't see jazz fingers. Hello, jazz fingers. Jazz fingers. Avia. Jazz fingers. Hello, Jonah. I do not see. That's what. Hello, jazz fingers. Yakira, Nina. Okay, everyone. Listen. Today we have a big treat. Our big treat is in honor of Yom HaZikaron. We have a wonderful speaker. Now, what's interesting is sometimes we have speakers that come to us and it's not the easiest thing to relate to because maybe their background is so different than us. And, you know, it's hard to like be inspired because you say, I didn't grow up in Yugoslavia, or I didn't necessarily have to fight the Russian army, or this is something totally different. This is someone who went to SAR. This is someone who was in the same building you were in at some point. And today she's going to tell her story of being in Sahel and being in Israel. And I want you to really, whatever you're doing, and Olivia, Emma, Daniel, Yakir, I don't see your faces. I want to see your faces. I want you to give as much respect as possible to Tamar because she deserves it. Not only as someone who, Lizzie, let me see your face. Daniel, let me see the face. Now I see the face. Oh, the whole face, Daniel, not just half the face. There we go. And you went away. The whole face, Daniel, the whole face. There we go. I want everyone to keep showing their faces. I want you to be able to really listen and to be inspired by someone who I think is really has a story that's going to really resonate and sit with you. And in honor of not only so many people, not only given their lives, but have really dedicated their lives to making sure our state, our homeland is secure. So Tamar, without any further ado, if you could please introduce yourself, tell us your story. And then if we have any questions, everyone, please put them in the chat. And Ms. Glassberg and I will make sure Tamar gets to them at some point if she doesn't already. Okay? Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, guys. 1 second. I'm just making sure I have all the pictures that I want to show you. Let me see, last one. Perfect, okay. My name is Tamar. Tamar David is my last name. I'm from New Rochelle. Is anybody here from New Rochelle? Yeah, who else? I see some people raising their hands. Yakira, who else? Emma, Elizabeth. Okay, anyways, nice to see you guys. I miss everybody back in New Rochelle. I'm talking to you from Jerusalem. Right now it's 10:30 p.m., which means that Yom HaZikaron was yesterday. We already started Yom HaAtzmaut. But I am so happy to be able to zoom in and see you guys because I also went to SAR. I went to SAR Academy. I went to SAR High School. I graduated in what feels like not long ago, but now I am 22. So I guess it was a few years ago. And right after I graduated, I made Aliyah and I joined the IDF, Tzahal, and a lot of that was because of the Israel education at SAR and all the speakers they brought. I remember especially the Tkasim at on Yom HaZikaron in SAR, and that's why I'm really honored to be a part of it today. Like I said, any questions, stop me in the middle, write in the chat. I'm really here to answer your questions. And I know that growing up in America, sometimes Israel and especially Tzahal, the army, could feel a little bit distant. And I hope that after today, it doesn't feel as distant because there's a real strong connection between Jews all over the world and the Israeli army. And that's why I'm here, just to talk about it a little bit and bring it a little bit closer to you guys. My first Israel memory ever, and maybe you guys can relate, I'm hoping you can, that they still do this, but I was in the ELC, and on Yom HaAtzmaut, they tie a blue ribbon to your wrist and a white ribbon to your wrist, and they do kachol velavan. I don't know if there's a feedback, but if you guys know what I'm talking about, that's my first Israel memory of all time. And now I live in Israel, and my whole life is Israel, and I joined the Israeli army. So it's been a bit of a journey. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about why I made the decision and my job in the army. Let's start with what I did in the army. So I served in the army for 2 years. I'm going to pull up the pictures now because it'll definitely help. Let me see. Screen share. Okay. Okay, this is a picture of me. I was a shooting instructor in the army, which meant that I taught soldiers how to use their personal weapons. This is a picture of me shooting, but a lot of my days looked more like this. You guys could see that, right? Sometimes in small groups, sometimes one-on-one. This is like what it looks like to be coaching a soldier one-on-one. And I taught on a bunch of different weapons. All of my teaching was in Hebrew. And I never thought that I would be a teacher until I kind of got to the army, and I realized I liked public speaking and I liked explaining, and I felt like I liked talking and communicating with a lot of people, and they assigned me to this job, which I was so happy that I got assigned to. Me, like everybody else in the army, doesn't have any experience going in. Nobody comes in being a teacher or a shooting instructor or a medic, or nobody knows how to fly a plane when they come in. I mean, everybody comes in at an 18-year-old, more or less, level of education. So once I enlisted in the army, the first 5 months was school, which was a little bit annoying because I had just finished school and I thought I was done. But I'm holding in this picture 3 different weapons. Those are 3 out of the 6 weapons that we learned for those months. 5 months, all day, all night. We practiced shooting, but it was also a lot of all the parts of the gun, how to take it apart and put it back together, how to fix if there's a jam, how to reload. I don't know if you guys play video games. I know that some of these words come up in video games. And really, our lessons and our training was for a very important end, and that was in order to teach every Israeli soldier how to defend Israeli citizens and save lives. And one of my favorite things about my 2-year period in the army, is I woke up every day feeling like I had a job and a meaning, and that we were really, little by little, every soldier that we taught was going to be able to save lives. And that's really what happened. And I was so lucky. I finished 2 years. I probably taught hundreds of soldiers. I don't even know how many at this point. And just want to go back to this picture. Just, it gives you a little bit more of an idea, because you can see the faces of the chayalim, soldiers. And it was just a wonderful experience every day, giving back. And so that's more or less what I did day to day in the army. The Hebrew was pretty hard, but little by little you learn and you get used to it. And now, if you guys have any questions about jobs, what I did in the army, I'd love to hear. And if not, I want to talk about why I joined the army. Because I don't see the chat because I'm doing a screen share. I don't know if...
Right. No, we'll
yeah, we'll give you the
You'll
question.
stop me.
Yeah.
Okay.
One question I do want to ask is, were you fluent in Hebrew before you went?
I was not. I was SAR Hebrew all the way. I have grandparents that live in Israel, which is I'm going to talk about next. And I visited them in the summers, but I really was not fluent in Hebrew. I went to SAR high school and I knew that I wanted to go to the army. I knew that I wanted to make Aliyah. I tried really hard as much as I could to learn Hebrew in high school. It's a hard thing to pick up until you're in the environment that everyone around you is speaking Hebrew. So I remember my first couple months in the army, I got a little bit laughed at, you make a lot of mistakes. And then little by little, eventually I got to a point where I was very confident. But thanks for that question. It was, that was a big challenge.
Well, it really inspires all of us who like maybe not so great at Hebrew to know that you can learn it, and and you can still have these dreams and not let things stop you. There's a couple other questions. One of the students wants to know if you're still in the Army.
Okay, I'm not still in the Army anymore. I know I'm wearing a green shirt today. It was a coincidence. I finished the Army about a year ago, and now I study at Hebrew U, but I do reserve duty.
Okay. What is reserve? Oh, you'll talk a little bit about reserve duty. And also,
okay.
Someone wanted to know if you got hurt when you were in the Army.
Thank God I never got hurt. I think that the danger that Chayalim put themselves in every day is very real. Most of me and most of the people I was with, most of my friends, we never experienced any actual wartime situations, more or less. And thank God I could say that every base was super safe, super secure, and I never felt, apart from, most of the time I really never felt any danger. I could say that one danger that I did feel when I was in the Army that most of Israel shares is my base was in the south, and there were different periods during my service that there were rocket attacks. Thank God. I really, to answer the person's question, I never got hurt. But those were the only scary times. Other than that, we were shooting on cardboard targets, just to be extra clear. We were practicing.
Yeah.
It wasn't real combat situations.
Okay. And then also, what are you studying at Hebrew U now?
So this year I'm in a program for new immigrants that finished the Army, a transitional year in between Army and university. So I literally just submitted my application for next year, and we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
Wonderful. So why don't you tell us why you joined?
Okay, so now I'm gonna pull up a picture. Let's see. I feel very old when I'm like struggling with the technology, but I feel like I'm your age, guys, so please don't judge me. This is me with my Saba. My Saba, I just actually spoke to him on the phone earlier today. He's 90 years old now. This picture was a couple of years ago when I was in the beginning of my Army service, but my Saba was super, super proud every time I came to his apartment. He lives in Tel Aviv in my uniform, because my Saba also joined the Army when he was 18, but that was a long time ago in 1948, and he was in the Palmach. And my whole life, I grew up kind of hearing from the family stories about my Saba. He was originally born in Hungary, and he had 6 siblings, and in the Holocaust, a bunch of his siblings were killed. His parents were killed. My Saba was in Auschwitz. And after getting freed from Auschwitz, he made it to first Italy, and then on a ship. There was all these ships that went from Europe to Israel in the years leading up to the War of Independence in the state, called the Mapilim. And my Saba was on one of those ships. And thank God he made it into Israel. Israel was under the British control back then. He was just telling me today a very dramatic story of having to jump out of the boat and swim to shore, because before the War of Independence, I know it's hard for us to picture this, but Israel wasn't in our control, and there was no Israel, there was no Tzahal, there was no Israeli state. So my Saba almost snuck into Israel after the Holocaust, after he lost everything. He wasn't alone. He was with his brother. My Saba's brother was named Yaakov Yehuda, but, can you guys see the picture?
Yeah. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, fine. Yaakov Yehuda, but his name in Yiddish, he grew up by the name of Leiby, and this is an amazing picture that my family recently found of Leiby. Like I said, he survived the Holocaust just like my Saba. They were more or less the same age, and they both smuggled their way into Israel. And that part of the story was enough to really pique my interest. And I was just shocked that, I can't even imagine what my Saba and Leiby went through in the Holocaust, losing all their family. And then their next step, what do they do next? They decide to come to Israel and fight, like to join another war. This was something that inspired me my whole life. And like I said, my Saba got onto one bus, and that was called the Palmach. They became the Palmach, which was a force that eventually became Tzahal. A lot of little forces joined together to make the IDF that we know today. So that was what my Saba did. Leiby got on a different bus, and that bus became a Chativa, a brigade in the army that is now known as Golani. So they were separate during the war. And Leiby was more towards the north. My grandfather was more towards the south. And my grandfather's brother, Leiby, unfortunately was killed in the War of Independence. He was 19 years old when he was killed. There are two stories that we've heard about how he was shot, even though we don't actually 100% know. These stories we found out by going to the Golani Museum. The Golani was the unit that he was in, and they kind of have a detailed folder on every single one of their soldiers that fell. And there are two stories I'll tell you that we've heard about how he died, a conflicting accounts. One of them was that he left the sheltered bunker to go bring a friend that was sick water. And the other one was that he left the sheltered bunker to get to fill-in so he could daven. And I think, we're never going to know what's true, what's not true, but they both really speak to Leiby and who he was as a person. My grandfather and my grandfather's sister, who's also alive, their accounts of who Leiby was as a person totally align with those stories. He was an incredible, incredible person, strong-willed. He was able to survive the horrors of the Holocaust. And like I said, after giving it all up, come to Israel and give that last thing he had, which was his life, up for this country. And I heard bits and pieces of this story growing up, and it totally shocked me to my core. And I was so impressed by Leiby and who he was, and I wanted to know more, and I wanted to research more. So we would come to Israel with my family to visit my grandparents in the summers. And Golani, Leiby's unit, invited my grandparents to a memorial service basically every summer that they had at their museum for their fallen soldiers. And I remember, I don't even know how old I was, but I remember sitting on my parents' lap and watching this, and it's all in Hebrew, and I don't really understand, and feeling extremely connected and feeling extremely touched by all the stories of Golani soldiers that fell throughout our country's history. And even back then, I felt like I wanted to take part. So fast forward years later, I was a junior at SAR High School, and we were really starting the college process. I knew that I wanted to go to Israel even then, and I started researching army drafting, making aliyah, and my grandparents still live here in Israel. Unfortunately, my grandparents live here alone. All of their grandkids live in America, in New York. I mean, for me, there was something a little bit off about that picture, and I really wanted to do my best to fix it. So I came to Israel. My grandparents met me at the airport. It was the summer after senior year, after finishing high school. And I came to Israel with a program called Garin Sabar. And the program helped a group of us acclimate to the country. They put us on a kibbutz in the south. And we learned kibbutz music and dances, and we ate the kibbutz food in the Chadar Ochel, which isn't very good. And we lived in teeny tiny apartments, and we practiced our Hebrew as much as we could. And we learned about the army and about the country. We opened bank accounts. We opened like accounts with a doctor. I forgot what it's called, like medical insurance, all the little things. 3 months later, I was standing at a line in the drafting center. And I I mean, the 2 years went super fast. They were amazing. Like I told you before, I woke up every day feeling really like a part of a whole. Through my service as a shooting instructor, here, I'll put in a different picture just to keep you guys interested. Through my service as a shooting instructor, I was able to tour the entire country, which was the biggest gift that the Army gave me. I had exercises from the tip of the north to the tip of the south, almost a lot. I'm not even kidding. We went everywhere because the idea is that the Army has to practice on every type of terrain. If you're only used to the south and then there's a war in the north, how are you going to be ready? How do you know what to do? So we were always running around the entire country, every single place in the country, every single terrain. And I just remember we would take buses everywhere in the country, a lot of buses, looking out the window of the bus and thinking every square inch of this land, someone really gave up for it. It's not, we didn't get this handed to us on a silver platter. We're not entitled to all of the land. It didn't just appear. The soldiers of the Israeli Defense Forces and the victims of all the terrorist attacks that we've seen in our nation's history have really been the only reason that we're able to walk around on Israel today, and that we're able to go to Aroma and have an iced coffee, or go to the Kotel, or hang out on the beach in Tel Aviv. It's totally 100% because of them. And now it's Yom HaZikaron. And really, this is something that we should be thinking about every day of the year, but we're lucky that we have this one day to pause everything and really reflect on who these people were and how much they gave up. And, you know, it's no coincidence that Yom HaZikaron falls back to back with Yom HaAtzmaut. It definitely feels weird sometimes, the transition, but we have to realize that the two things are intrinsically connected and inseparable. We can't have one without the other. And Zehu, I want to see if I have any other pictures. That's more or less what I did in the Army, why I drafted to the Army. I'd love to answer your guys' questions. And
one of the students would like to know who survived the Holocaust with your grandfather, with your Saba.
So, thank you for asking. My Saba survived with 3 siblings. And then one of them was Leiby, who was killed in 1948. And his other 2 siblings lived in Israel until recently. My grandfather's brother passed away 3 years ago, and my grandfather's sister's still alive. And they're still hanging in there. And they both live in Tel Aviv. And my grandmother, who is actually way younger than my grandfather, she's not a survivor, but I mean, ever since I made Aliyah, I've been able to spend way more time with both my grandparents and my grandfather's sister than I ever thought. So
yeah,
I'm very lucky.
You talked in the beginning that you do the reserves, like you're like on call as a reserve. What does that mean?
So I do reserve duty, which means that if my unit that I taught shooting in is ever running low on manpower, they don't have enough teachers, I'm sure in SAR sometimes, you need a substitute teacher, then they call me up. They have an agreement with my university that I get to miss a couple days of class, and I put on the uniform, I pretend I'm still in the Army. A lot of people in Israel still do reserves. It's a big culture here. Mostly men, but also some women. And every time I go back, it's like I never took the uniform off. It's a lot of fun.
How many Americans were with you when you went into the program originally?
So that's a great question. There are a lot of international people in the Army. Jews come from all over the world, and non-Jews, but really the majority Jews, to serve. And there's the possibility to go to the Army if you want to make Aliyah. And there's also a possibility if you don't want to make Aliyah. The Army recognizes that Jews that feel a connection to Israel, that want to come in, give a 1.5-year service, and then go back to their home country is more than beneficial. So I was with like 3 other girls in my training program that were also international. They weren't Israeli. And one of them was French, and then one of them was from Colombia, and the other girl was American also from Miami. So we were like a little crew. We were both like, all 4 of us looked at each other, what's going on all the time in the beginning. But yeah, there actually is a lot of people I know a lot of people in the Army that draft really without so much Hebrew at all. It really depends on the job. Some jobs, they seek out people that speak different languages for social media and stuff like that. The Army has units for everything. There's a band in the Army. There's a magician in the Army. There's chefs in the Army. There's social media in the Army. But there are a lot of internationals. I wasn't the only one.
Okay. And then also, one student did ask how many times you went back. Have you been back in the reserves?
3 times I've been back for a week each. It was wonderful. Yeah. I wanted, if there's more time, I wanted to share with you guys. There is?
Well, yeah, but hold on.
8 minutes.
Becca, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask first, I think some of the kids want to know, like, what was the hardest thing you had to do in the Army? Like, what was your like hardest moment that you can think of? It seems like you had a lot of training and.
So the Army has highs and lows, and I really think that the highs I wouldn't have had this much fun, and I wouldn't come here and tell you what an amazing time it was and an amazing experience if I didn't have those low moments. They really do exist. And there are hard things. As a religious girl in the Army, especially in my unit, there weren't a lot of religious girls. So whether it was finding time to daven or on Shabbat, sometimes I had a hard time being the only one that was Shomer Shabbat on base, even though I didn't spend a lot of Shabbaton on base. You know, the Army, there's no training on Shabbat. It's a Jewish Army. They follow halacha, but you have to stay on base to do shmirah, to do guard duty. So some of the people on base weren't Shomer Shabbat like I was, so that was struggle. And in tune with Yom HaZikaron, I could tell you that some of the hardest days were Yom HaZikaron in the Army. It's a big tradition in Israel to visit the cemeteries, the military cemeteries on Yom HaZikaron. Like, I couldn't tell you guys how many people are there. Every military cemetery is flooded with people. And this year, because the government was so scared that people would go, even though they're not supposed to, they put up soldiers by the military cemeteries to make sure people don't go inside. But I just wanted to share, I have a picture right here. One second. I'm on a different screen share, aren't I? Okay, I'll show you. One second.
Tamar,
Yeah.
I want you to find the picture, but also
Yeah.
mind talking to us a little bit about the coronavirus, COVID-19, and how is it going, and like what does it look like in Israel? Because we only know New York right now.
Okay. I'd love to.
I know Ms. Glassberg and I have been like pretty curious about it, and you just mentioned about the cemeteries.
Okay, so this is a picture that was taken a couple years ago. That's my grandfather, my grandmother, and that's my cousin who was in yeshiva in Israel that year, and that's me in the uniform, visiting the grave of Yaakov Yehuda, my grandfather's brother. And I don't know if you could even see a little bit in the background. The cemeteries are packed, flooded with people, because what the Army does is every Yom HaZikaron, they send a different soldier to a different graves to make sure that every single grave has a soldier and nobody is alone. Because as you can imagine, a lot of soldiers that fell, for example, in 1948, some people don't have family around right now to visit their grave. And my first year in the Army, I really wanted to go visit my great uncle's grave, do the tradition with my grandfather, be there with him, stand there with him. And the Army wanted to send me to a different grave. It was very challenging because there really should be a person at every grave. In the end, thank God they were able to relocate somebody else, and they were able to make sure that there was a soldier standing at every grave, and I was able to go with my grandparents. But that was to answer your question of a hard time, one that I could remember. It was really challenging. You know, the challenge between the personal and the group. Okay, about Corona. I stopped screen sharing. The Army, I'll talk about for a second, has been doing a wonderful job dealing with COVID-19 more than I think anybody else. At the very first scent of the virus, they basically shut down the bases, and they said nobody goes in, nobody goes out. So they were able to keep the Army functioning for almost 40 days. Nobody left base, which is a long time to go. Most people are normal to leave base on Shabbat or every other Shabbat. And the Army kept functioning, and then slowly they were able to let people out and let people in after the pandemic kind of calmed down in the country, which was really great because it's very important to keep the Army functional. I mean, even when it doesn't feel like there's a lot going on in the news, there's always soldiers on the border, always making sure that everyone's safe, and that's a top priority. In Israel, it's been, thank God, I could say it hasn't been so bad. We haven't experienced very much shortages of anything. I know I speak to my parents and they talk about toilet paper shortages or yeast or things like that. But we had a little bit of a scare with eggs, but then they came back and we have eggs again. And everything's been okay. I think in Israel versus in America, there's already an army here that's very active that you see all the time. So they have been able to enforce rules on a level that in America must be much harder. So, for example, for Yom Ha'atzmaut, which started tonight, they are enforcing a lockdown that nobody could leave their houses unless they're going to the grocery store until Yom Ha'atzmaut is over. Because if not, they feel like there would be barbecues and Yom Ha'atzmaut parties and different events. And I don't know, you tell me, in America, I don't think they do real lockdowns like this. No.
No.
But yeah, we're hanging in there. Thank God they were able to do a beautiful tekes for Yom HaZikaron at the Kotel with really a small amount of people, but some key people were there. The president was there and the commander of the army was there, and they spoke beautifully. That was last night. And yeah, thank God the numbers here really, Baruch Hashem, are positive, I think.
Tamar, do you see yourself staying in Israel, or do you see yourself coming back, or do you have a plan with that, or?
Yeah, I met my fiance in the army and we're engaged. Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank you. New development. And his name is Yossi. He's great. He's also from America, also made Aliyah, and also was a lone soldier. We met in the army on base. And he also goes to Hebrew U, and we're both planning on staying here, Bezrat Hashem. I love it here. Hopefully my family could join us.
Amazing. Do you have anything that you would say to your sixth grade self? Like, can you remember sixth grade, right? It's like
I'm trying to remember.
7.
I think you guys have it way better than I did because you did a lot of renovations and the building is really gorgeous now. It was also gorgeous back then. It was just from the 70s.
Right. And also, remember, these guys are, really in their own part of school upstairs where you didn't, that wasn't even built out.
Right. It wasn't.
About 6 you're getting ready for 7th. High school is not too far in the distance, but you're trying not to worry about it. That kind of thing.
Right. I just want to, I guess, tell you guys, really take advantage of everything that SIR has to offer. I can imagine everybody rolling their eyes. Sixth grade me would probably also roll their eyes, but you guys are an amazing place, amazing school. Junior high is awesome, a lot of fun. I know the work is getting a little bit harder little by little. But we talked before about other international soldiers in the army, other Americans that were with me. I could tell you that I had an advantage to every single person. The overall education at SAR, and especially the Israel education, was amazing. And my first Yom HaZikaron in Israel, I was able to stand there and say, oh, I know these songs from the tekes at SAR. I I know these words from the fellows at SAR. I don't know. I feel like you have a lot of resources that I would really say take advantage of as much as that you can. It's a really, really special place. And yeah, I don't know what else I could say to sixth graders without making them hate me, but
No, we appreciate so much you taking the time to talk to us. Does anyone have any other questions? I think I really appreciate it. I feel very inspired myself. Like, I think it's amazing to think that, like, I don't know, I guess, like, I hear a lot of the sixth graders say my Hebrew isn't that good. And so I really like that you're kind of like, like that's
you guys,
not to.
you have the base. You don't even realize how much you have. That's what I'll say. Like, I could tell you all these different times that a word came to me in Hebrew and it was hiding in the back of my head from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, because you study Hebrew a lot. You speak Hebrew every single day in school. So I know that it's really, really challenging. I know that it's not always the coolest class to try hard in, but it's really cool once you can speak Hebrew. And my whole relationship with my grandfather, who is super important to me, and now we're super close, only started 3 years ago when I came to Israel. Because until I spoke Hebrew, he didn't speak English. I couldn't speak to him. He only spoke Hungarian and Hebrew and Yiddish. And it just opened a whole door, a whole new world for me. And I know it's scary. It really is. But it's all about confidence. And yeah, just keep working at it. Eventually it'll come.
Thank
you. You guys are great.
Thank you so much, Tamar. Make sure to thank your grandfather for us. Let him know that we wanted to thank him for his service. And make sure to thank your fiance and all your friends. And please, God, when this virus is over, when we visit Israel, we should look you up. And
I mean, guys, get in touch. We're waiting for you in Israel. We really are. I know how hard it is for everyone in America right now suddenly to be cut off from visiting Israel. I know it's a big shock. Just the thought that, if you say that to my grandparents, they'll kind of laugh at you and say, my whole childhood, we could never visit Israel. Just to think a little bit about what Jews in history, the whole Jewish history, to just jump on an El Al flight to Israel on a whim is a privilege that we worked hard for and people died for, and that's what today's all about. So we'll see you here soon, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Tamar.
Such an inspiration.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, for joining. Have a great day. Get out into the sunshine, please. It's good for you.
Right, we know you guys had a choice in coming, so we appreciate that you did. That was meaningful for you.
Yes. Be well, guys. Talk to you later.